Damn it.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Beyond the Arc. I'm Manoli.
And I'm Montana. Sorry, guys. I was really close to getting every single link posted before we started. This prompter worked, and I was excited, man. Oh,
Oh.
my bad, guys. I hope way to go, right?
That was perfect. That might be our best open yet. What's up, everyone? We're happy to have you with us here. Episode number 31. They don't want this smoke. They really don't. And we're happy that you guys are here with us. If you haven't already, and if you wouldn't mind, please hit that subscribe button to the Yankee and the Brit Sports Group. In addition to Well Beyond the Arc, a lot of great shows here on the Yankee and the Brit Sports Group. Even some documentaries out here. We know there was a great John Gotti one that was released about a week or so ago. So be sure to check that out. Hit that subscribe. You'll know when we're on. You'll know when all this new content is out, and you'll be guaranteed that you will be entertained. We'll just put it that way. Montana, other than missing one link to post to promote our great show, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, man. I decided I've been sending so many parent emails with signing off Coach H. I'm like, I'm just gonna make it that right now because that's just been my life the last few days. Lots of parent emails to my swim team. I don't even know if I've ever talked about my swim team before. I'm a coach of a swim team and lots of parent emails. So just had to sign that off like that. But it's been going well out here. I'm enjoying the winter. I don't know how the winter is back on the mainland, but it's sure nice out here.
That's it's there have been worse winters, but it's not my favorite season. We'll put it that way. And funny you asked that. We should be getting some more snow here in the next day or two. So hopefully, just like every time the Chicago weather people say it's going to snow like 20 inches, hopefully it's like a dusting, and we can just move on with our lives. So, well, let's jump right into it, man. It's been a couple weeks since we last had our show. Lakers and Bulls both have been busy. Um, Montana, well, how about your Lakers, man? They're looking a little better these days.
Hey, I threw on the champ hat because I'm feeling a lot better. I threw on the champ hat. I don't have not thrown this on the whole season, so we're not quite where we need to be. But a lot of good news. I mean, Anthony Davis is even rumored to maybe make an appearance this coming week. I kind of don't expect that to happen, and I kind of don't want that to happen. But I kind of think they should wait till the following week. But it doesn't matter. We have big games coming up. Obviously, as we record this evening, a couple hours, we've got Lakers Clippers Battle of LA. I'm just really glad they're not trying to bring him back in a game like that. I kind of think bringing him towards maybe against the Knicks, that would be a good game for him to come back. That's the end of the week. So we've got a 5 game stretch ahead of us, but I have us going 3-2. I do have us dropping both of our rivalry games. We have the Celtics and the Clippers this week. And I just don't think we're that team to beat them quite yet. But I think come playoff time, maybe we see both of them. Maybe we see the Clippers in the West and we see the Celtics in the finals. So the pendulum might swing, but right now we're not quite there yet. But it looks a lot better for the Lakers. We're sitting 12th, and we're that much closer to getting to 500. So that shouldn't be the goal of the Lakers, but that is unfortunately the goal. But definitely a lot better than when we last recorded.
Nice. Well, I mean, yeah, your Lakers are 12th, but I just looked at the standings, I think, this morning, and yeah, they might be 12th in the West, but they're only 2.5 games out of the fifth spot, which is insane. There's just a log jam of 7 teams. Dallas currently has the fifth spot, and I think they're only a game or two over 500, if I'm not mistaken. But hey, man, if your Lakers go on a winning streak and the other teams smoke, good to have you as always. Yeah, they do. Well, hey, we'll get to that in a second, but uh, who knows? Stranger things have happened. Little win streak. These other teams to continue to fall. Um, that'd be hilarious if the Lakers got up to the fifth seed, but we'll see what happens. Since we last had a show, my Bulls have won 3-3. Still can't make it to 500. We're 22-24, 10th in the East right now. Washington's hot on our tails, which, yeah, whatever. I'm not too happy about that either. But lost to Boston, not too ashamed about that. But losing to Washington and OKC, those are teams you got to beat if you're a quote unquote playoff team, and the Bulls didn't get that done. Managed to somehow beat Golden State at home by double digits. Don't ask me how that happened. And then they travel out to Paris, got DeMar DeRozan back, ended up beating the Pistons by 12 or 14 over there. They went overseas, had a couple French baguettes, put on some berets, saw the Eiffel Tower, came home, and then beat Atlanta last night. So up and down. They're up and down all season. They're going to hover around 500. I've said it a million times on this show, but what are you going to do? Side note, congrats to DeMar DeRozan. Played in his 1,000th career NBA game last night. DeMar DeRozan's as old as my little brother, which makes me feel really, really old. But he's still playing at a high level. If the Bulls were any better, he'd be an all-star candidate, but I don't see him making the all-star squad this year. But we'll get into that in just a second. One thing we do need to get into, Montana, is the injury bug, man. There have been, I mean, there's always injuries all throughout the season, but there are some key injuries to some contending teams, and it just seems like in the last couple of weeks, a lot of guys have been falling to injury, and it's just crazy right now. We have, Chris Middleton made his return the other night. Giannis Antetokounmpo has been out of the lineup. Hopefully he'll be back here soon. More so because I have tickets to the game, not this Saturday, next Saturday. Marcus Smart went out with an injury. Donovan Mitchell has been out with an injury. Tyrese Halliburton, CP3 has been in and out of that lineup. Devin Booker's been out for a while. Continues.
These are the guys.
All these guys. And let's not forget about Kevin Garnett. Wow. Kevin Durant, who's out for the next 2 weeks as well. Montana, what do you make of this injury bug, and which of those guys that I just rattled off is going to continue to have the biggest impact to their team by not being out on the floor?
It's I can't even pick because these are the guys. These are stars. We always see injuries, and we see a lot around this time. There's always injuries. I mean, this is a long season. It's a really long season. There's a lot of up and down. There's a lot of different themes they go through. All that. There's a long season. So lots of injuries come and go. But we're seeing a lot of these key players being out. The good news is a lot of the injuries are they don't seem to be extremely major. A lot of them are going out with the injuries that they'll bounce back with plenty of time before playoffs. A lot of these, I don't want to say this is a good time to get injured, but it kind of is because we're still in that beginning half of that season. And a lot of these injuries aren't extremely major, but it's not a good sign especially a team like you said, the Suns. The Suns need those guys because they are a struggling team. They are not a really solid team like people may have thought they would be going into the season. And then we talk about players like John Wall. Unfortunately, John Wall with an abdominal strain, he's out again. And that is a key piece to that Clippers team. Cat has been battling an injury. Cat is going to remain out. I believe they said they're taking another week or two, and then they're going to reevaluate, but that's not good. Kevin Porter Jr., is his team doing good? No, but they're definitely doing a lot worse without him. So, these are players that these teams need, and we're seeing it in a lot of these, records. They're going down. They're not doing what they can do. The one team I will say that has excelled and kind of stayed consistent is the Nets have done a pretty okay job of
all the teams.
The
Nets have faced adversity and are surviving.
We talked about it within the first 10 minutes. That's pretty quick for us. We've at least made it 30, 40 minutes, but you got to talk about it because that's a team that has stayed afloat without Kevin Durant. So, and then again, we cannot forget about Kristaps Porzingis. He has a left ankle sprain. The Wizards, like you said, are a team that's hovering right now. All these teams that are hovering need these guys to be in. And so especially those teams that are hovering, of course, the teams that are contending need those guys, but most of those teams that are contending, like, for example, the Celtics have had a couple of injuries throughout their team, but they've stayed afloat because of their depth. These teams that are competing are not going to sink when those guys are out. But a team like the Wizards with Porzingis, they need him. The Clippers.
Bradley Beal too.
Bradley Beal. These are teams that will sink. So it's a problem. These are the guys that these teams need to stay afloat, and they're not. Without them, I just feel like we're going to see a lot of records dropping.
Yeah, I think the team that's been hurt the most by injury has been the Phoenix Suns, because I think going into the season, I think most people had them as a top 4 team in the East, or I'm sorry, West, at the very least, right? Devin Booker goes out, they seem lost, but another key injury there is Cameron Johnson's been out as well. And that's not a deep Suns team either. There's been many games lately where CP3 and Devin Booker have been out. And I need a program to find out who's on the Suns there. I mean, I recognize Mikal Bridges. DeAndre Ayton's been out. I mean, it's just crazy who they're putting on the floor. They're basically fielding a G League team right now. They were third of the West, and all of a sudden Booker gets hurt, and they're free falling into the play. And I don't even know where they're at right now. Pretty sure they're right at 500, but yeah, the Phoenix Suns, they need those guys back more than any team we've just mentioned. I mean, Boston, like you said, they're deep as hell. So Marcus Smart, obviously a big loss there, but they'll make up for that. They can tread water in the regular season. Chris Middleton hasn't played for most of the season for the Bucks, and the Bucks have remained a top 3 team. And the Clippers are like a mash unit. They just switch out. They take turns who's going to be sitting out and who's going to be playing, basically. But Chris Middleton hasn't played much for the Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo recently with a sore knee. They need both of those guys in the lineup for them to compete for a championship. But they're still maintaining a top 3 East spot, so should have both those guys back in the lineup this week. Donovan Mitchell going out on a freak injury again. Cleveland's deep right now, and they're talking about trading possibly Karis LeVert. If you have Donovan Mitchell hurt, you can't afford to give up LeVert right now. But yeah, well, we shall see. I mean, fans, we tune in, we go to the games to see these guys play. Hopefully, everyone gets healthy soon, and there aren't any other serious injuries here. So, and another reason we want to see these guys because we want to see them in the All-Star game. And believe it or not, we're about 3 or 4 weeks away from the 2023 NBA All-Star Weekend in Salt Lake City. Utah Jazz playing host to the league's, can't even say mid-season classic anymore because they play about 55 games in. But the fan vote has ended, and recently the NBA changed their voting from 100% fan vote to where fan vote counts as 50%, and then the media members and the players make up the other 50% of the vote. And I mean, Montana, I think you remember a couple of years back with the Warriors when, the Warriors fans tried to like crazy to vote Zaza Pachulia into the All-Star game. Guy barely played 10 minutes for his own team. But, the league's doing things against that. But if you had, and I don't know if you submitted an All-Star ballot, but let's do our mock All-Star ballots right now. Who would you have? Let's start with the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. Who would you, if you haven't already, but who would you pick as your starting 5? Again, 2 guards and 3 front court guys.
Yeah, so for my backcourt guys, for the East, we're starting with the East, correct?
Yep.
I've got to go with Kyrie Irving, and again, assuming Donovan Mitchell is healthy, because I do think he'll be plenty healthy. It's a groin injury, and I believe that they said he's day to day, or he's at least it's close to day to day. So I'm going with him being healthy by then, and I'm going with Kyrie Irving and Donovan Mitchell for my backcourt guys. Those are my guards.
Okay. What about your front court, your 3 guys there?
This was tough. The front court was definitely a lot harder than the back court for me to make up. I mean, this front court for the East, it was tricky, but I had to go with it was tricky, but I finally narrowed it down. I have Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Joel Embiid. Those are by far the guys that are just for sure the top of the top. I mean, again, lots of names you could throw in there, but those who I had to narrow it down to because those are by far the best.
Yeah, so the actual fan vote after the 3rd round of fan voting had Kyrie Irving and Donovan Mitchell in the background. That's who's leading for the fans right now. And then the front court is Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, and Jason Tatum. So I mean, you're right there. You're right there with the rest of the fans. For me, it's tough, especially with the front court. For me, I mean, you can have Kyrie Irving or Donovan Mitchell. I actually went with Jaylen Brown and Donovan Mitchell. Personal preference, to be quite honest with you. I think Kyrie Irving's been in and out of the lineup in the beginning of the season, but I wouldn't have any issues with Kyrie Irving starting the All-Star game. I think that's a good pick there. But for me, it was Jaylen Brown, the second best player on the best team in the East. Why not? In the front court, I had Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, and Joel Embiid, knowing very well that Kevin Durant may miss that All-Star game due to injury, and Jason Tatum sliding right in for him. But Antetokounmpo, Durant, Tatum, Brown, and Mitchell for me in the East. So pretty close to what the fans said as well. I think we just have one-offs on both sides. So still very, very tough vote for the East. Before I ask for your West, the fans in the West so far have Steph Curry and Luka Doncic in the backcourt there. And their front court is LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, and Anthony Davis. So now knowing what the fans have said, you're already shaking your head, Montana. Who's your West starting 5?
Before we go into that, that's assuming Anthony Davis stays healthy until All-Star break. I don't think that's going to happen. But anyways, back to so I definitely, as you can probably tell, I don't have him in my list because I don't see him staying healthy. But for my backcourt, I have the exact same Steph Curry and Luka. Those are just the guys. honestly, the backcourt was pretty easy. And the front court wasn't super difficult, but there was one spot that I was struggling to find. I had Nikola and I had LeBron James easily. Jokic and James are in there for sure, but I was struggling with that other spot. But I finally came to terms with the fact that I never thought I would be saying this, but I had Lauri Markkanen as that third player in that. I never thought I would ever say that, but he's my third guy. He's been consistent, and I think he's in the mix for sure. So that's gonna be my third front court guy for the West.
It's as if I'm sharing my screen. I'm showing you my list over here.
Same. Wow.
Well, I had a tie, which you have to pick one of these guys, but my notes have the exact same top four that the fans had: Steph Curry, Luka Doncic. How do you have anybody else as your starting backcourt in the West? LeBron James, I think that's a no-brainer. Nikola Jokic, reigning two-time MVP, the best player and the best team in the West. That's a no-brainer as well. I agree. I think before the injury, Anthony Davis is playing at an all-world level. I don't think he'll be back, or having missed a significant amount of time. I would have to have somebody else in that list. And I had two people. I had Lauri Markkanen, just like you had, but I was going between Markkanen and Domantas Sabonis of the Sacramento Kings.
That was the other one I had too.
I mean, if you would have told me at the start of the season that the Kings would be the 3 seed in the West towards the end of January, I don't know what I would have said about you, but that's the case. I mean, the Kings are the NBA's best story. We'll talk about that and more so in the West here in a little bit, but I have to lean towards Markkanen. I like the idea of a first-time All-Star, especially starting. I mean, he's a great story, finally living up to his draft night potential. That Utah team, although they've done a little worse recently, are still in the playoff mix in the West, which everybody was expecting them to be tanking for Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Lauri Markkanen. I'm gonna match you on your 5 for the West. That's a good pick right there.
And I think, honestly, that spot could go any two ways. Sabonis was my second again because it's for the fact that he's always been a talented player, but he's on a talented team as well, and it's showing not only in his stats, but it's showing with where they're ranked. We've not seen the Kings here for the longest. We haven't seen the Kings here for the longest time. We've not. I mean, this is not a spot that they have seen for the longest time. So will they hold that until playoff time? I don't really know, but Sabonis is right there because that team is great, and he is a huge part of that success. I mean, he is one of those players that has lifted them from one of the bottom teams to one of the top teams.
Yeah, I think we won't go through our reserves yet. I know that the coaches and players, they're going to be voting on the reserves, and those are going to be announced in the next couple of weeks. So once those are announced, we'll give our reserves as well for the East and West. That'll be a fun time trying to narrow those guys down. And who knows in the West? Who knows? Maybe a De'Aaron Fox might make his first All-Star appearance. I don't know if the Kings would get 2 guys, but there is definitely a lot of competition in both conferences for those final 7 spots. So it'll definitely be interesting. Speaking of All-Stars, Warriors coach Steve Kerr decided to rest all of his All-Stars in Cleveland last week. Caught a little flack with it. This isn't the first time Kerr's done it, but this isn't the first time that a coach has rested guys for quote-unquote load management. We saw Spurs coach Greg Popovich start this a number of years ago when he had vets like Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. I remember seeing a box score where it said DN for next to Tim Duncan, DNP did not play. And instead of an injury reason, he just put old because that's what Duncan was at the time. So this is always going to be an issue. But I think Kerr was also trying to make a statement when asked about it. He said, I'm doing it to preserve my guys, but I'll continue to advocate for a 72-game season because of this. Now, currently, the NBA season, as you fans know, is an 82-game season plus the playoffs. Montana, what do you make of Steve Kerr resting his starters in Cleveland, the one time that the Warriors go to Cleveland? And on top of that, what do you think about reducing the season to 72 games?
So I'm not a big fan. I mean, we understand load management exists and that's been around, and we've seen a lot of players who have done that. And I can't, sometimes it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it really doesn't. A lot of the times, a lot of the load management situations, I scratch my head at. Some of them make sense, but again, most of them don't. I feel like that just to me seems a little disrespectful. I just feel like that's crazy to go into Cleveland. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of like a Cleveland fan too. Like I'm not a Cleveland fan, but Cleveland's a solid team. Cleveland's not a bottom of the barrel team, and Cleveland is a team that has been up there in the East. So for me, it's also that kind of doesn't feel right too, just to rest all your guys to pick that specific game. Maybe that wasn't what he was doing. I totally get it's a long season, a lot of a lot of nights, you're even if you're not going back-to-back games, you're traveling. You're always going in the NBA. So I kind of understand that, but to me, that specific game I thought was interesting, and maybe it was just what ended up being picked, and it wasn't like specifically picked, but it just to me that seemed odd because Cleveland and the Warriors have gone back and forth. But either way, I would say I understand what Steve Kerr says, especially when we talk about shortening the season. We just talked about injuries. We just talked about and a big part of those injuries are the night in and night out, running back and forth on the court, all those different moves, all that. I mean, doing that for 80 plus games plus playoffs, that's a lot. So I'm kind of with Steve Kerr, but I'm honestly saying maybe go below 70. I think you go. I think you go below 70 games. I really think you shorten it below 70 games. I agree. I think 60 games tops. I honestly agree with that. I think it's that's one change that the NBA has needed to make is maybe you shorten that season and you keep it that. You don't just keep going back and forth and trying to figure out what you're doing. You find that and you hold that. And I think 60 games honestly is the perfect number. So I agree with that.
So I get Steve Kerr's rationale too on why he needs to do it. I mean, he's got a job. His job isn't to do what the fans want. His job is to put his Golden State Warriors ball club in the best position to win every night. That's strategy. And part of that strategy involves having to rest guys, play guys certain minutes, dole out certain minutes. He's got his finger on the pulse better than anybody of that squad. So I get what he's trying to do. From a fan standpoint, it's a crap situation, and we saw this last year with the Warriors, where there was a fan in Denver. There was some parents with a little girl who had this sign said we couldn't wait to see Steph Curry, and was in tears because Steph Curry didn't play that night. Now it's a little bit different in the West because in the West you see every opponent twice. In the East, opposite conference, like if East goes to the West, West goes to the East, you only see that opponent one time. So, for fans of, Stephen Curry was born in Akron, Ohio. I mean, that's basically because his dad, Dell, played with the Cavaliers at that time, but whatever, a coincidence. Maybe he had some family friends, or there's some people there who were huge Steph Curry fans, and then they weren't be able to see him. Same situation, but they're not going to have another chance to see him this year in Cleveland. The NBA has to do something about that. I don't know if they're going to, putting some sort of ticket insurance, but then how do you track that? If you're an opposing fan, I mean, how do you really track it? Because anybody can say, oh, I came to see Steph Curry, he didn't play, I want my money back, or I want some sort of discounted ticket or credit towards ticket. I don't even know how that works from a business operation standpoint. It's just a mess all the way around. And at the end of the day, the person who loses is the fan. Now, as far as how many games in a season, it's been 82 games for as long as I can remember. We're talking about decades. And the reason the season is that long is two reasons. Number one, the NBA season is a marathon, and it's basically a battle of attrition to see, who can last. I mean, that's part of what it is. And number two is money, right? So all these calls for Steve Kerr to say, okay, it's going to be 72 games, and I understand the rationale of reducing the season. Maybe there are too many games, but I don't think there's a chance in hell the NBA reduces the number of games in the season. That's too much revenue, whether it's TV revenue, whether it's revenue at the ticket booth, the concessions, all that stuff. Zero chance the NBA reduces it. In fact, they might even increase it with this stupid play-in tournament they're talking about implementing next year. So, crap situation. I don't know, but I don't know. Do you have a suggestion of how the NBA can go around this?
I think they should reduce it, but I also understand. I mean, with the revenue, that's what they're going to focus on. That's what it always is. It's never about the actual sport it is, but it's really not. It's about the revenue. And so the problem with that is, again, reducing it to 60 games, they would lose a lot of revenue. I mean,
quarter of the season right there.
I would say that the way to combat that, if they could cut it down to 60 games, but add some type of mid-season tournament, or just you have to add something. If you're going to take the games, you have to add certain things to add revenue. Sitting here right now, I can't even think what that would be, but one of the ideas you can do several different things, but they've talked about holiday tournaments, mid-season tournaments. Maybe you just add different types of tournaments or different things you can win and different, I don't know, maybe you just expand what you can win, and maybe that's in the form of a tournament or something like that to increase revenue. But even that I don't think would cut it. So realistically, they're not going to cut those games down, and if they do, they wouldn't probably drop it to 60. But I think it would be better as a fan. I think it would be better. I think it would make the sport a lot better if they cut it down. But again, I don't see them doing that unless they can figure out some tournament or something to get some type of revenue to make up for those missed games.
Well, not only that, but if they lose revenue, that means player salary is going to go down, and that players aren't going to be too happy about that. I mean, if I was a player, I wouldn't want somebody taking money away from me. Absolutely not. Well, hell, I'm not an NBA player. I still don't want anybody taking money away from me. Hate it when look at taxes, but that's a different story for a different time. Anyway, something that we never charge our fans for is the best running game show on the internet. It's time for another edition of NBA Player Or. If you are an avid follower of Well Beyond the Arc, you know how the game is played, but in case you're a newbie, we're going to explain it anyway. Every week, I give Montana the name of 5 individuals, and he has to tell me whether or not those individuals are a current or former NBA player or someone from another profession. And that's something of another profession can be literally anything. We're talking astronauts. We're talking ballerinas. We're talking about European politicians, WWE stars, reality TV people. I mean, it literally can be anything. And Montana has no idea what type of category I picked ahead of our show. Heck, a few minutes before the show, I don't know what type of category it is. So anyway, to date, Montana is 97 out of 130. He's 5 for 5 in calendar year 2023. If you can remember last show, folks, he said it. The man said it himself. I didn't say it. He said he was not going to miss a single one in 2023. So in the event, well, in the likely event, I should say, that Montana gets a question right, you'll hear this sound. Victory! Thank you, Johnny Drama. And in the unlikely event Montana gets it wrong, you will hear this sound. Simple enough, right? Montana, how we feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good, but I'm not sure. I'd never know until once I know what it is, I'll feel either better or way worse.
Okay. So how often do you watch the news?
Not often.
Any news? Like any channel?
Not really.
Okay.
I subscribed to a newspaper once because I got 2 free hats, but that's all the news I've ever gotten since I moved to Hawaii, and I haven't read the paper since I've gotten it. But so not really.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Well, this should be interesting because this week's NBA player is NBA player or major TV station news anchor.
Well, we'll see. Is Ron Burgundy going to be on there? I could get that one.
Normally I wouldn't give you a hint, but I can definitely confirm that Ron Burgundy is not going to be one of the 5 names I give you.
That's one I could get for sure. That's maybe one news anchor, but I guess not real, so that wouldn't count. But you could have put that in there. If I didn't know what that was, I would have no idea. So I was hoping that might be a trick one. I was hoping that might be in there.
I would hope that you would know that Ron Burgundy was not an NBA player. We'll see. Anyway, let's get into it. Name number one.
It's the worst time for this to happen. Oh no.
Am I freezing? Oh no, I'm good. I see it.
We're back now. Okay.
All right, let's try this again. Is this the name of an NBA player or famous major network news anchor? The name is David West. David West.
NBA player.
Victory! Just seeing if you're paying we're just seeing if you're paying attention. David West, yes, definitely was a former NBA player. Played in the league from 2004 to 2018, 2-time All-Star, mostly with the Hornets. Spent a couple of years with the Indiana Pacers and finished his career with the Golden State Warriors. 1 for 1. Name number 2. Is this the name of a current or former NBA player or a major network news anchor? His name is David Muir. David Muir. I mean, I may even be pronouncing that. Just look at the visual.
I'm going to go with news anchor.
Victory!
Bum, 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 bum. Yes, David Muir, however the hell you pronounce his name, is the anchor for ABC News. He's anchoring that major ABC national news telecast, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. I don't know. I guess that's 6:30 Eastern. All right, 2 for 2. All right, Montana, name number 3. This is where it gets harder. Is this the name of a current or former NBA player or major news anchor? His name is Joe Scarborough. Joe Scarborough.
I'm going to wow. I'm going to go with news anchor.
Victory!
3 for 3. Joe Scarborough, definitely a news anchor. He is an anchor for MSNBC. No relation to Tyler Hansborough. All right. Name number 4. Is this a current or former NBA player, Montana, or is this the name of a major network news anchor? The gentleman's name is Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks.
I'm going to go with NBA player.
Victory!
Seemed a little unsure with that one. Aaron Brooks played in the league from 2008 to 2018 with the Houston Rockets, spent a little time with the Phoenix Suns and Chicago Bulls, among other teams. 9.7 points per game in 645 career games.
Oh my gosh.
All right,
I'm not sure
if Montana's at the edge of the seat, I can't imagine how the rest of you guys at home are seeing this and listen to this. All right, Montana, you are 4 for 4. And the fifth and final name. Is this the name of a current or former NBA player or the name of a major news network anchor? His name is Mitchell Wiggins. Mitchell Wiggins.
I'm going to go with an NBA player.
Flawless victory.
I got to start making these things harder. Mitchell Wiggins definitely was an NBA player, played in the league from 1984 to 1992, mostly with the Houston Rockets, but also spent some time with the Chicago Bulls and Philadelphia 76ers. And also, he is the father of current Golden State Warriors forward Andrew Wiggins.
That's the only reason I was like, okay, maybe. I connected the dots. There we go. I'm going to be honest. I thought I was about to have a heart attack. I wasn't sure if it was the 3 double quarter pounders I ate for dinner last night or if it was just the game, but I feel a little better now. So I think it was just the game.
All right. Well, folks, that puts our buddy Montana here at 102 out of 135 for the game's history, but more importantly, 10 for 10, 2 consecutive 5 for 5s. He said he wasn't going to miss one all year, everybody.
Yeah, you're going to have to wait till 2024 to see me miss one.
All right. Maybe NBA player or cities in Asia may be the next one. But anyway, well done, sir. Well done. We'll hold for a quick word from the Yankee.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Jay from Yankee and the Brit telling you to come over and check out our shows. The Yankee and the Brit Sports Talk, Well Beyond the Arc, the Markout Podcast, Flagrant and Foul, Real Talk with Jay, and MMA Underground Weekly at YouTube/The Yankee and the Brit. Deuces.
All right, be sure to check all that out. And again, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button on the bottom left-hand corner if you're just watching us on YouTube. Every subscription helps. So appreciate your guys' support of Well Beyond the Arc and all of the rest of the shows on the Yankee and the Brit Sports Group. All right, Montana, let's get into the good, bad, and ugly for this week. Heck, let's go. Good. Go right into it.
Of course. So honestly, I mean, the thing I don't like to say this because this is a team that I'm really not a big fan of. But when I have to talk, and this is I think a segment we're going into later about the best in the West. But when I'm talking good, I've got to go into the Nuggets. This is a team that they've had pretty good success pretty consistently this season, and they've had some struggles the last few seasons to stay consistent, and I think that's really because of injuries. They've had some pretty bad injuries and not the best, but they've stayed pretty consistent and they've strung together some pretty good wins in the last week. So I think that's a team that honestly looks like they are potentially going to actually make that push this season. So when we talk about good, I've got to go with the Nuggets because they had a really successful last week of basketball.
Yeah, my good is Montana having a second consecutive 5 for 5 in NBA player or 10 for 10 for no. Well, that is good. But my good for this week is actually the Boston Celtics once again going on a 9-game winning streak. And not only that, distancing themselves from the 2 seed. I believe it's the Philadelphia 76ers, believe it or not. 4.5 games up on the East. I mean, the East is a juggernaut as well. But got to give it to the Celtics. A really, really hot start. Played some 500 ball, had to go through some things, but now they're back on a hot streak. So good for me right now is the Boston Celtics, despite the Marcus Smart injury. What about your bad?
So yeah, I'm sticking a lot of my picks are for teams this week because my bad has to be the Suns. I mean, the Suns. The problem is they're 7th, but the biggest problem is they're 4-6 in their last 10 games, and a lot of those games they should not have lost. This Suns team is not a complete team. They don't play as a complete unit. You can say it's injuries, but it's more than that. They had some off-season drama. They've had some during, it's just there's a lot going on there. So that Suns team, I mean, they're sitting at 7th, but I don't see them moving from that spot. And before the season started, I don't think the Suns were probably thought to be 7th in the West. They were thought to be more up in the top 4 because that's who they've been. So that Suns team 4-6 in their last 10 games, that is not good. And I just think it's going to get worse for them, especially with injuries.
Yeah, I made the reference that they looked like a G League team out there with the roster they were trotting out with CP3, Devin Booker, and I think DeAndre Ayton being out too. Cameron Johnson I mentioned being out.
Like their whole their starters, they've got their it's like, and then some. So
somehow Mikal Bridges is still healthy. Knock on wood. I hope I didn't jinx him, but he's got his consecutive game streak going. But is there a team in the NBA that needs to make a trade more than the Suns? I don't think so, but we can get into that in just a second. Bad for me is 2 teams actually, and they have to do with losing streaks. Houston, who's probably, I think they have the worst record in the NBA. They are at 13 in a row as their losing streak at the moment. And then the Indiana Pacers losing 7 in a row. And I think that one's more glaring, more so because of the Tyrese Halliburton injury. But the Pacers were a surprise team and still, in that top 10, 12-ish for the East right there. No one was expecting the Pacers to be even competing for a play-in spot. But 7th game losing streak will take you out of that, especially in the East real quickly. So I'm going towards the Pacers in their 7-game losing streak right now. How about the ugly, Montana?
Well, there's only one thing it can be. It has to be the Memphis Grizzlies made themselves look like absolute clowns. I mean, the biggest thing, it's funny, but I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, to call Shannon Sharpe a pedestrian, I mean, that's ridiculous, especially someone who has such a high up place in, sports media, because I'll be honest, Undisputed is ridiculous. It's not a show that actually is, they talk about the Cowboys the whole time. I mean, or the Lakers. It doesn't matter. That's it. That's all they do. It's all about Skip's Cowboys, Shannon's Lakers. Maybe they'll talk about it. Shannon Sharpe is the reason I watch that show, because when they're debating, he is on it. I hope he gets on a different show, or Skip gets off soon, because Shannon Sharpe has a high up place in sports media, not just because of what he did before, but what he's doing now. So I think that was ridiculous to call him a pedestrian, to even interact with him like they did on the court in LA. I just didn't think that just was not.
And they lost the game.
So that was a terrible look. The Memphis Grizzlies, pedestrian. I mean, if anything, they're the pedestrians. I mean, to be honest, if anyone's a pedestrian in this situation, what have they won? Let's talk about all those players' accolades on the Memphis Grizzlies and see if they have any accolade that stands anywhere close to Shannon Sharpe's. Different sport, but accolades are accolades, and they don't have that. So I got to give it to them. That was ridiculous.
I mean, I know Shannon Sharpe isn't as tall as some of these NBA players, but I don't know if I'd want to be caught in an alley with Shannon Sharpe being pissed at me and want to get in a street fight.
Even Adams was the only one I was kind of like, all right, that's one that might, but even him, I feel like Shannon, Adams is the one that was the closest. When he was stepping up, I'm like, okay, that's one that's like, okay. a little.
Look, I'll just say I had the exact same ugly. So let's get right into it about the Memphis Grizzlies, man. So
Absolutely.
the West, the two top teams in the West that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack are the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, granted, the Memphis Grizzlies have John Morant, who's one of the most entertaining players in the league right now, but they have seemed to get a reputation of trash talking and being just this annoying team. And that all unfolded the other night at crypto.com arena, which it still sounds weird to call it that.
I hate that.
Getting into it with Shannon Sharpe courtside of all people, like John Morant, Dylan Brooks. I'm with you. Steven Adams and Shannon Sharpe in the octagon. I'd pay money to see that.
Oh, me too.
I don't know who I'd take. I'm leaning towards Shannon Sharpe, not gonna lie, but I don't know. Steven Adams is like the NBA's international man of mystery, so who knows? He might surprise us. But do you find the Memphis Grizzlies more of a good basketball team or more of an annoying basketball team at this point?
More of an annoying basketball team, and I did not think that about them until this season. I mean, it was all about their grit and making it to the playoffs and making a push, and like I liked that, but this Grizzlies team is not that team in the sense that they are just kind of an annoying basketball team. And I really like Ja. I really like some of those players that make up that team. I like Baines. I like a lot of those players. It's just I don't really like the dynamic of the team as a whole, and they are an annoying team. I mean, they remind me of some other annoying teams that we've seen in the past. They're right up there for me. So they're kind of an annoyance. They've begun, that path. They're on that path. I hope it doesn't continue because I like a lot of the players, but they've began that path because they're kind of that team for me that I'm just like, pretty annoying. But again, that could shift. We've seen teams bounce back and lose that image pretty quickly. That could have just been, it could just be a
Brooklyn Nets, excuse me.
Well, yeah, that's the best example though. So hopefully it's something like with a bounce back, and I don't see it not being that because I don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's so serious and it's some big. I think they'll be fine, but they are that team to me that's annoying right now.
Look, I'll give the Memphis Grizzlies credit. They're a great team. They're a great team. One of the best in the league. We just talked about them being one of the top two in the West. Uber talented. John Morant, Desmond Bane, like those guys. Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., who could be up for a Defensive Player of the Year award for all I know. A bunch of young talent, and that talent, they're locked in for the next few years, right? So they're not going anywhere. Taylor Jenkins has done an amazing job coaching that team the last couple of years and developing them and getting them. I mean, they played a tough playoff series against the Warriors last year. But with all that being said, I admire their bravado. I admire their confidence, but they're talking as if they've accomplished something. And the Memphis Grizzlies have not accomplished a damn thing. John Morant saying that he wasn't worried about anybody in the West. Well, if you're in another playoff series with the Warriors, which I know the Warriors don't look like much right now, are you really not worried about them? The team that knocked you out of the playoffs last year. You're not worried about the Denver Nuggets, who's currently the number one seed and looks like the most all-around team in that conference. I'm not buying it. And getting distracted by anybody sitting courtside, let alone someone that kick your ass like Shannon Sharpe. I don't know. It's head scratching to me. And they're only talking smack because they know he's not coming after them on the court. I'd like to see them, behind closed doors and see if they're really talking that much.
And they wouldn't be. And that, I mean, that's the thing. We've seen a lot of courtside interactions, and they're usually pretty entertaining. There's been some, especially when it comes playoff time, there's been some courtside talking from celebrities, especially that's pretty entertaining. That's front and center. But I just think this was not that. This was not what was going on. It was not. I don't know. The whole situation was ridiculous, and I'd say that the Grizzlies were out of line for how they react. I mean, they shouldn't have. The whole team just kind of started to get all tough and act like. And they have no accolades. They've never. The team itself has no accolades, really. That Grizzlies team hasn't won anything ever. I would say if it's a team like the Lakers, the Celtics, or the Warriors, the Bulls, all these teams that have accolades, you can talk a little bit, even if your team isn't all that.
You've earned the right to talk.
Yeah, and they've not earned that right to talk. So I don't think. That was not a good look for them, and they've become that annoying team, at least for this season, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, look, talk if you want, but it's just funny to me. It's just entertaining to me that these guys are more, and they lost focus because they obviously lost the game with a game that they should have won. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, come on now. We came back. We came back against the Trailblazers, 20+ points down, and we came back.
That's
Thanks
true.
to Pat Bev. The one thing Pat Bev has done the whole season is apparently he gave a halftime speech that hyped them up, but that's really all he's done. So can't say too much other than that.
Well, when Patrick Beverly seems to be a calm model and quiet citizen compared to the Memphis Grizzlies, that it's a head scratcher.
Mhm.
But let's talk about the other top team in the West right now, the Denver Nuggets. They still have the reigning 2-time MVP Nikola Jokic. He might be going for a 3-peat as far as an MVP goes. They have Jamal Murray back healthy. Michael Porter Jr. has been in and out of the lineup, but not a serious injury, but still monitoring that and all that good stuff. They just have a great team, a very exciting team, both on both ends of the court. What do you make of the Denver Nuggets?
I would say this. I would say it's too early to say this is any team's year. I mean, we can give predictions, but if there's one
Absolutely.
team that looks like this could be their year with their health, with their depth, with everything, it's the Nuggets, and they're not even done. I think we're going to see them add more depth. I think this is a team that before we see that deadline pass, they're going to get more depth. This Nuggets team is going to build. I think this is going to be a team that builds up, and I think, again, this is one of the, even with the injuries, I think this is one of the deeper Nuggets teams we've seen. I think this is a team, and I think this is the team currently in the West that I can see absolutely being in the finals. That's the team that is like there's no doubt in my mind at this very moment with who they are, the wins they've struck. They've had some bad losses to some teams they shouldn't lose against. That's just the season. That's how it goes. There's 80+ games. It's okay to drop a couple of those. They're not going to do that the whole season. They're not the Lakers. They're not going to lose games they shouldn't. So, the Nuggets are a solid team. And I think that this, if we can say it's any team's year, I think it's theirs. I think they really look like that team. I hope that they remain to stay healthy. Some of those players that have had injuries and gone back and forth, and some of those players that are out of the lineup, if they get them back in, they'll just be stronger. So I think the Nuggets are the real deal. And I don't like to say that at all. I'm not a big Nuggets guy in the slightest.
I don't mind the Nuggets. I think they need one more wing piece to be able to compete. I mean, say what we will about the Warriors, but they're still the champs until somebody beats them. And, you got to match up with those guys. Again, we talked about Jamal Murray. We didn't even mention Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's having a hell of a season. They're just deep right now. The health is going to be their number one thing. They got a great coach in Mike Malone, who doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think the Nuggets have a legitimate shot, especially if they can lock down the 1 seed. I think they have a legitimate shot to come out of the West. I do agree with Smoke, though. I do think the champ's coming out of the East this year. Now, who that is, I don't know, but I'm willing to take my chances with the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Well, we haven't done one of these in a while, but we only got a couple minutes left here in today's show. Let's go through our MVP ladder. This always moves around. Let's start at number 5, Montana. Let's just start spitting them out, and worst it comes to worst, we change it again in a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. So I've got Embiid has moved up into my top 5. He's right at my 5 spot. Embiid has not been in mine all season, but his play is starting to pick up, and he's looking healthy and ready. So he's my number 5 right now for my ladder.
Yeah, I have. Well, actually, I just put someone that's injured on mine. Just had a brain fart. Yeah, I'll put Embiid on mine right now as number 5. I had him as my honorable mention right now, but Embiid is currently my number 5 for the same reasons you just had. So it makes it simple enough. Who's your number 4?
So I've got Jason Tatum at my number 4. I think that's kind of where, he was up at 2, I think, the first time we did it, but his play's been good. But I've got him down. He's down to my 4 spot just because there's some better play, I think, above him. But he's still in that top 5 for me.
Yeah, I actually have Giannis Antetokounmpo at number 4 right now. That's only because he's missed some time here with injury. For me, best ability is availability. He hasn't been on the court lately. I'm sure that will change, and we'll find him moving up on my MVP ladder. But right now, I got him at number 4. How about number 3?
And that's where he's right at my number 3 spot for the same reasons. I did have him above Tatum just because I think when he has been on the court, his play level has been higher. So, and he'll be back. I mean, Giannis is a pretty durable player. Giannis will be fine. The Bucks have nothing to worry about. He'll miss some time, but then he'll be back for the rest of it. He's really durable. So he's sitting at my 3, but I think he'll move up as he progresses back with more minutes.
And this is why they call it a ladder. You go up and down. I have Jason Tatum at my number 3. Best player on the best team. Not really much more I could say about that. Although it is head scratching, I make that type of comment. I have him number 3 on my list, but that's where I have him right now. How about your number 2, Montana?
So yeah, I've got Jokic at my number 2 spot. He's been putting up historic numbers. He does that. I'm not trying to hate on him when I say, oh, his numbers aren't great, but every time I say that, his numbers just get ridiculous. I'm like, oh, he's having an okay average season, and then he'll have some insane historic span of games like he's been having. So he's just that player that's really special. He's had a couple of minor things throughout the season, but he's pretty durable. That's another player that is pretty durable. He's kind of been the Nuggets light in the dark whenever they've had injury problems because he'll stay pretty durable and pretty healthy. So he's my number 2 spot. But again, number 2 and number 1, he was almost my number 1, but my number 1 is just a little bit above him because, he's been playing great. But again, this is just a little bit higher level of play for the number 1.
I think we're going to have the same number 2 and number 1, and for the exact same reasons. I think Nikola Jokic got off to a slow start and then reminded everybody, hey, I'm pretty damn good at basketball. Nuggets, like we said before, first in the West, having another outstanding season. He's going to make it very difficult for folks not to vote him as an MVP for the 3rd straight year. But I have him at 2. I almost have him as 1B right now, to be honest with you. But yeah, I have Jokic at number 2.
And then
How about
again,
go ahead.
Probably no surprise who I have at 1. Probably no surprise who you have at 1. Luka. My biggest thing is Luka is playing his level of basketball. He's been playing the whole season, but they're winning now. They're the 5th seed, I believe, right now. 4th or 5th seed. I think they moved down to the 5th though. But they are playing incredible basketball for who they have because they're not an incredibly deep team. They don't have all the pieces, but they're making it work. And Luka's leading that team, and I think we're seeing Luka maybe grow a little bit in leadership, just in getting everybody going and taking this team, because he had Porzingis. He kind of had a number 2. He really doesn't have a set number 2 in my position. I don't think he does. In my opinion, he doesn't have that. Porzingis was barely a number 2, but he was that guy. So Luka's doing great for what he has, and the team is playing a lot better, and it's just showing in his stats and in the win-loss column. So it's got to be Luka. He's the end. I still think that's the guy when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I also have Luka Doncic at number 1. I just think it's his year to take it. I'd like to see the Mavericks do a little better in the standings and rattle off a few more wins. They've been way too erratic for my liking. But honestly, where would the Dallas Mavericks be without Luka Doncic? They wouldn't even be in the play-in right now.
The 13th or 14th seed probably.
Absolutely, it's kind of scary, to be honest with you. Luka Doncic is having a crazy season. Definitely going to be an All-NBA All-First teamer. He just needs a little bit of help, but he also has to trust his teammates a little bit more. If you watch a lot of Mavericks games, his usage is just off the charts. He's basically everybody, and this is a smart thing for the Mavericks. They're camping around the 3-point line. He'll drive and dish, or he'll just dish out, and they rely a lot on the jump shot. Maybe the Mavericks need to add someone like an Eric Gordon or another shooter that would help take some of the pressure off Doncic. I think they have couple of those guys on the roster, but they need to get deeper. But man, just because of how incredible Luka Doncic is playing, and it's a miracle that the Mavericks are 5th right now in the West. That's why I have Luka Doncic and the 1st seed for MVP ladder this week. Well, coming to a close on another episode of Well Beyond the Arc. We appreciate you guys joining us as always, but this isn't the only place where you can find our work. Montana, where can our fans find you outside of this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple other shows I'm doing. I have the Connor and Heffernan show. Me and my buddy Mark do that. It's kind of a weekend show. We are dropping an AFC and NFC championship game prediction episode this coming weekend. So look for that. It's on. You'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us on Spotify. You'll find us under the Connor and Heffernan show. And then another show I have, basketball related, is the Purple and Gold Zone. I just dropped my newest episode yesterday. I believe it's Rivals, and I don't remember the rest of the title. Rivals and Letter Grades. There we go. Basically, it's all things Lakers, and I have an interview potentially set up within the next few weeks. I will be releasing who that is when it's closer, if I can get that locked in. So Purple and Gold Zone on YouTube and Spotify.
Looking forward to your interview with Mike Penberthy. Just kidding. That's not who it is. I have no idea who it is, but I am looking forward to that in all seriousness. You can find my work at my blog site as always. It's the Sports Page blog. You can find it at the sportspageblog.com. Just released another blog entry, just recapping the crazy Major League Baseball offseason. Also able to find some of those blogs and other sports content that I write at usanews.com. So be sure to check that out under the trending sports section. So be sure to check those out. So until then, we will see you guys next time. We don't know when that is, but that's another reason to hit that subscribe button. You'll always know when we're on next. So appreciate you guys joining us. Adios.